Most people do not realize that they are unhappy. They live their lives believing they are fine. They wake up, go to work, scroll through their phones, laugh occasionally, and repeat the cycle day after day. On the surface, nothing appears broken. Yet beneath this routine lies a quiet emptiness that refuses to go away. This emptiness is not dramatic. It does not scream. It whispers. And because it whispers, most people never listen. From a young age, we are taught that happiness is something we will eventually reach. We are told that once we achieve certain milestones, happiness will naturally follow. Finish school, get a good job, earn respect, find love, build a life. Happiness is presented as a reward waiting at the end of effort. This belief becomes so deeply ingrained that we stop questioning it altogether. The problem is not that people fail to reach these milestones. Many do. The problem is that when they finally arrive, happiness is not there. Instead of joy, they feel relief. Instead of fulfillment, they feel exhaustion. Instead of peace, they feel pressure to maintain what they have achieved. This is the first crack in the illusion. Happiness was promised, but something else was delivered. What most people experience is not happiness, but distraction. Distraction from discomfort. Distraction from dissatisfaction. Distraction from unanswered emotional needs. Modern life offers endless ways to stay distracted. Entertainment, social media, achievements, relationships, validation. These things do not create happiness. They numb the awareness of its absence. True happiness is not excitement. It is not constant pleasure. It is not the rush of winning or the thrill of novelty. True happiness is a state of inner alignment, when a person's values, emotions, actions, and sense of self are not in conflict with each other. And that state is rare, not because it is unattainable, but because most people have never been taught how to reach it. Instead, they are taught to perform. From childhood, people learn to become what is expected of them: a good student, a responsible child, a successful adult. Over time, they slowly disconnect from what they actually feel and want. They learn to suppress discomfort instead of understanding it. They learn to chase approval instead of authenticity. This creates an internal split. The person they are versus the person they present to the world. This split is exhausting, and exhaustion is often mistaken for adulthood. Many people believe that feeling tired, unmotivated, or emotionally flat is simply part of growing up. They normalize emotional emptiness. They normalize stress. They normalize anxiety. When something becomes normal, it stops being questioned. And when it stops being questioned, it stops being solved. Happiness then becomes a myth, something other people seem to have, something shown in movies, posts, and success stories, something that feels just out of reach. The hidden reason most people never feel truly happy is not because they are broken. It is because they are living a life that was designed by external expectations rather than internal truth. And a life lived out of alignment cannot produce peace, no matter how successful it looks from the outside. This is where the cycle begins. A person feels empty. Instead of exploring the emptiness, they chase something to fill it. That something provides temporary relief. When the relief fades, the emptiness returns, often stronger than before. So they chase again, and again, and again. Over time, this cycle becomes their identity. They are always on the way to happiness, never realizing that the way itself is the problem. Breaking this cycle does not start with positive thinking. It does not start with motivation. It starts with awareness, the courage to admit that something is missing, and the honesty to stop pretending otherwise. Most people never feel truly happy because they never stop running long enough to ask a simple but terrifying question. Is the life I'm living actually mine? Long before people begin to question their happiness, they have already been trained to misunderstand it. This training does not happen through a single lesson or moment. It happens quietly, repeatedly, and so early in life that most people never realize it occurred at all. By the time they reach adulthood, the conditioning feels like common sense. From childhood, individuals are taught what to value and what to ignore. Praise is given for achievement, obedience, and performance. Approval arrives when expectations are met. Discomfort, confusion, and emotional complexity are often brushed aside or corrected rather than explored. Slowly, a message takes root. Some parts of you are acceptable, and others are not. This message is rarely spoken directly. It is implied through reactions, comparisons, and rewards. A child learns that being calm is better than being upset, that success is better than curiosity, that fitting in is safer than standing out. Over time, they adapt. They learn how to behave in ways that earn validation. They also learn which feelings to suppress. This is the beginning of emotional disconnection. When emotions are not understood, they do not disappear. They go underground. They resurface later as anxiety, irritability, numbness, or an unexplained sense of dissatisfaction. Adults then label these experiences as stress, burnout, or personality flaws, never realizing they are echoes of unmet emotional needs that were never addressed. Society reinforces this conditioning. Productivity is celebrated more than presence. Busyness is mistaken for purpose. Rest is earned, not respected. People are admired for how much they can carry, not for how deeply they understand themselves. In such an environment, happiness becomes associated with progress, not peace. Comparison intensifies the damage. Modern life exposes people to constant images of other people's success, beauty, and happiness. These images are carefully curated, but the human mind does not process them that way. Instead, it interprets them as evidence. Evidence that others are doing better. Evidence that one is falling behind. Evidence that happiness exists elsewhere. This creates a subtle but powerful form of self-rejection. People begin to view their own lives as insufficient. They stop noticing what is meaningful in their present moment and focus instead on what is missing. Gratitude feels forced. Contentment feels lazy. Ambition becomes a coping mechanism rather than a genuine desire. The result is a permanent state of dissatisfaction. Even when people achieve what they once wanted, the satisfaction is brief. A new standard quickly replaces the old one. There is always someone more successful, more confident, more admired. The goalposts move and happiness remains conditional. Family expectations add another layer. Many people carry dreams that were never truly theirs. They pursue careers, lifestyles, or definitions of success that were handed down to them, rather than chosen consciously. Even when these paths lead to external stability, they often lead to internal conflict. A person may appear successful while feeling deeply unfulfilled, unable to explain why. This conflict creates guilt. Guilt for wanting something different. Guilt for feeling unhappy. Despite having everything, guilt becomes another reason to stay silent, to keep performing, to keep pretending. Over time, pretending becomes automatic. People lose touch with their inner signals. They no longer know what excites them, what drains them, or what they truly value. Decisions are made based on logic, fear, or approval, rather than alignment. Life becomes efficient but empty, structured but soulless. This is not a personal failure. It is the predictable outcome of silent conditioning. The tragedy is not that people are unhappy. The tragedy is that they believe this is normal. They believe adulthood is supposed to feel heavy. They believe joy is childish, rest is irresponsible, and fulfillment is unrealistic. They lower their expectations of life to survive it. And yet, beneath this conditioning, something remains intact. There is an intuitive awareness that surfaces in quiet moments. A sense that life could feel different. A feeling that something essential has been overlooked. This awareness is often drowned out by noise, but it never fully disappears. Breaking the cycle begins by recognizing that much of what people believe about happiness was inherited, not discovered. It begins by questioning assumptions that were never examined. It begins by realizing that feeling disconnected is not a flaw in character, but a signal. By the time people begin to sense that something is missing in their lives, they are already deeply entangled in a system designed to keep them distracted. This system does not rely on force or control. It relies on chemistry. More specifically, it relies on dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with motivation, anticipation, and reward. Dopamine is not the enemy. It is a natural and necessary part of the human brain. It helps people pursue goals, learn from experience, and feel motivated to act. The problem arises when dopamine becomes the primary substitute for emotional fulfillment. In that shift, pleasure quietly replaces peace. Modern life is structured around rapid rewards. Notifications, likes, entertainment, shopping, achievements, and even work itself are engineered to deliver frequent hits of stimulation. Each hit provides a brief sense of excitement or relief. The brain learns to associate these experiences with feeling better, even though the improvement is temporary. Over time, the mind begins to crave stimulation not for joy, but to escape discomfort. This is the core of the dopamine trap. When people feel bored, lonely, anxious, or empty, they rarely sit with those feelings. Instead, they reach for something that promises instant relief. A screen, a snack, a purchase, a win, a distraction. The relief arrives quickly, but it does not last. When it fades, the original feeling returns, often intensified. The brain adapts. What once felt satisfying now feels normal. What once felt exciting now feels dull. The threshold for stimulation increases, and the capacity for contentment decreases. People begin to confuse intensity with happiness and calm with emptiness. Silence becomes uncomfortable. Stillness feels unproductive. Presence feels boring. Peace, which is quiet and subtle, cannot compete with constant stimulation. As a result, many people feel restless even when their lives are stable. They feel dissatisfied even when nothing is wrong. They feel compelled to chase the next experience, the next goal, the next validation. This chase creates motion but not meaning. Work becomes a major source of this trap. Achievement provides dopamine through progress, recognition, and status. Goals are set not only for growth, but for relief. Relief from self-doubt, insecurity, or the fear of falling behind. Success becomes addictive, not because it brings fulfillment, but because it temporarily numbs inner tension. When work slows, discomfort returns. When praise fades, anxiety rises. This creates a cycle where people feel most alive when they are stressed, busy or striving, and most lost when things are calm. Rest then feels undeserved. The same pattern appears in relationships. Attention, affection, and validation can become sources of emotional stimulation rather than genuine connection. People chase chemistry instead of compatibility, excitement instead of safety. When intensity fades, they assume something is wrong, not realizing they have been trained to equate love with dopamine rather than trust. Even self-improvement can become part of the trap. Endless podcasts, books, routines, and techniques promise transformation. Each new method delivers hope and motivation, but without integration, this motivation fades and the search begins again. Growth turns into consumption. Awareness turns into overwhelm. When the nervous system is constantly overstimulated, it loses sensitivity. Subtle emotions become harder to feel. Gratitude feels muted. Joy feels shallow. People describe themselves as fine, okay, or just tired, because they no longer have access to deeper emotional states. This numbness is often mistaken for depression or laziness. In reality, it is the mind's way of protecting itself from overload. True happiness does not come from frequent peaks. It comes from a stable baseline of inner safety and meaning. It is built through connection, purpose, and self-trust, experiences that develop slowly and quietly. These experiences do not provide instant gratification, but they create lasting fulfillment. Breaking free from this trap does not require rejecting pleasure or ambition. It requires restoring balance. It requires learning how to tolerate stillness without escaping it. It requires relearning how to feel without immediately fixing or distracting. When people slow down, discomfort often surfaces. This is not failure. It is information. Beneath the craving for stimulation lies unmet emotional needs, unresolved tension, and unexamined beliefs. Dopamine has been masking these layers, not healing them. Most people believe that emotional strength means control. They believe that being mature means staying composed, rational, and unaffected. Over time, this belief shapes how emotions are handled. Feelings that are inconvenient, uncomfortable, or socially discouraged are pushed aside rather than understood. This process is known as emotional suppression, and it is one of the most overlooked reasons why people struggle to feel genuinely happy. Emotions are not problems to be solved. They are signals to be interpreted. Each emotion carries information about unmet needs, violated boundaries, or internal misalignment. When these signals are ignored, the message does not disappear. It intensifies. From an early age, many people learn which emotions are acceptable and which are not. Anger is labeled as disrespect. Sadness is seen as weakness. Fear is discouraged. Vulnerability is avoided. Instead of learning how to process emotions, people learn how to hide them. This creates a pattern where emotions are experienced internally but denied externally. The result is inner conflict. A person may feel hurt but act indifferent. They may feel overwhelmed but appear capable. They may feel lonely while surrounded by people. Maintaining this split between Inner experience and outer behavior requires constant energy. Over time, this emotional labor becomes exhausting. This exhaustion is often misinterpreted as laziness, lack of motivation, or burnout. In reality, it is the cost of carrying unexpressed emotion. Suppressed emotions do not remain inactive. They influence behavior in indirect ways. Unacknowledged anger may turn into irritability or resentment. Unprocessed sadness may manifest as numbness or disengagement. Unexpressed fear may show up as overthinking or avoidance. The person feels out of control without understanding why. Because the cause is hidden, the solutions often miss the mark. People attempt to fix their emotions by changing their circumstances. They switch jobs, relationships, or routines. They pursue self-discipline, positivity, or productivity. While these changes can help temporarily, they do not address the underlying emotional backlog. Over time, the nervous system adapts to constant suppression by staying in a state of tension. The body remains alert, guarded, and reactive. Relaxation feels unsafe. Stillness feels unfamiliar. Even during moments of success or comfort, there is a sense of unease, as if something is waiting to go wrong. This state erodes happiness. True happiness requires emotional availability. It requires the ability to feel joy without bracing for loss, to experience peace without guilt, to rest without self-judgment. When emotions are suppressed, these experiences become inaccessible. Many people fear that acknowledging their emotions will overwhelm them. They worry that if they allow themselves to feel, they will fall apart. This fear is understandable, especially for those who have never been taught emotional regulation. But suppression is not strength. It is avoidance. Emotions grow heavier when they are ignored. The inner conflict deepens when people begin to judge themselves for their feelings. They ask why they are not more grateful, more confident, more positive. This self-criticism adds another layer of pressure, reinforcing the belief that something is wrong with them. Nothing is wrong. Something is unheard. Happiness is not the absence of negative emotion. It is the presence of emotional honesty. It is the ability to experience the full range of human feelings without being controlled by them or ashamed of them. When emotions are allowed to surface, they often pass more quickly than expected. When they are resisted, they linger. Suppression traps emotions in the body and mind, where they quietly influence perception, decisions, and relationships. Releasing this suppression does not mean acting on every feeling. It means acknowledging them without judgment. It means creating space for emotional truth without immediately trying to fix it. This shift is uncomfortable, but it is liberating. As people begin to reconnect with their emotions, they often experience a sense of clarity. They understand themselves better. They recognize patterns. They identify needs that were previously ignored. This awareness reduces inner friction, and as inner conflict decreases, emotional energy becomes available again. Many people confuse growth with criticism. They believe they must be hard on themselves to improve. In reality, self-judgment creates fear, not change. Fear reinforces old patterns. Self-honesty, by contrast, creates freedom. It allows a person to acknowledge their limits, desires, and mistakes without turning them into identity. Instead of labeling themselves as weak or flawed, they see patterns as information. This mindset reduces internal conflict. Another critical shift involves redefining happiness itself. For most people, happiness has been defined as a feeling that should be constant, intense, and externally supported. When reality fails to meet this standard, disappointment follows. Real happiness is quieter. It is the absence of inner resistance. It is the feeling of being aligned with one's values and actions. This form of happiness coexists with sadness, uncertainty, and challenge. It does not require life to be perfect. It requires life to be authentic. Breaking the cycle also requires learning to set and honor boundaries. Unhappiness often persists because people continue to tolerate what drains them. They stay in situations that conflict with their values. They say yes when they mean no. They prioritize comfort over truth. Each small compromise reinforces the cycle. Boundaries are not acts of rejection. They are acts of self-respect. When people begin to protect their emotional energy, their nervous system stabilizes. This stability creates space for joy. The mindset shift extends to how people view progress. Instead of seeking rapid transformation, they focus on consistency. Instead of chasing motivation, they build awareness. Instead of waiting to feel ready, they take small, aligned actions. These actions compound over time, Breaking the cycle is not about becoming someone new. It is about returning to what was always present beneath conditioning, suppression and fear. As this mindset integrates, people notice subtle changes. They feel less rushed, less reactive, less dependent on validation. They recover more quickly from setbacks. They trust themselves more. This trust is foundational. When people trust themselves, they no longer abandon their needs to please others. They no longer betray their values for approval. They no longer seek happiness as a destination. They live it as a process. The cycle loses its grip because the inner environment has changed.